The laugh that echoed through the office. It was one of those mornings when the world itself seemed to sparkle, sunlight pouring through the glass windows of the tallest skyscraper in the city. Inside that glass tower, where suits ruled and egos sparkled brighter than gold, Elena Royce, the youngest female CEO in the country, was hosting a press conference that would soon be remembered for all the wrong reasons. Elena wasn't just rich. She was powerful, confident, and cold. The kind of woman who spoke with a smile but whose words cut deeper than a blade. Her company, Royce Innovations, built luxury vehicles for the elite, cars that only billionaires could afford. She believed only the finest minds deserved a place in her empire. And then he walked in, a man who didn't belong there. His name was Daniel Carter, a humble mechanic from the city's industrial district. Grease on his hands, worn-out boots, and a look of quiet confidence that stood out even in a crowd of suits. The whispers began the moment he entered. Who let him in here? Is he here to clean or fix something? Elena, standing on the stage, noticed the commotion. Her perfectly sculpted brows lifted slightly. She smiled, that dangerous, mocking smile that the board members feared and the press adored. "Sir," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, "I think the service area is downstairs. You might be lost." Daniel didn't flinch. He simply replied, calm and steady, "I'm not lost, ma'am. I'm here because your luxury prototype, the one your engineers couldn't get running, was sent to my garage for repair." The room fell silent. A ripple of laughter spread, starting with Elena herself. "You," she laughed, holding her champagne glass. "You mean to tell me you can fix what my team of engineers couldn't? Oh, that's adorable." Daniel met her eyes without blinking. "I can try," he said. That only made her laugh harder. "Well," she said, turning to the audience, "how about this? If you can fix it, this car that's baffled my best minds, I'll marry you myself." The audience gasped, half in shock, half in amusement. Phones came out, cameras clicked. Her voice echoed across the hall, but Daniel didn't smile. He looked at her, not as a man insulted, but as someone who had seen pride destroy people before. "Be careful with promises," he said quietly. "Sometimes they come true." For the first time, Elena hesitated. Something in his tone, calm, unwavering, unafraid, made her spine tingle. But she brushed it off with another laugh and a wave of her hand. "Fine, Mr. Mechanic, the car's in the basement. Let's see what you can do. But don't take too long. My patience, like my offers, is limited." As Daniel walked toward the elevator, whispers followed him like shadows. "This guy's insane. He'll embarrass himself. She's going to destroy him when he fails." But what no one knew, not Elena, not her engineers, not even the board, was that Daniel had once been more than just a mechanic. He had worked on designs that were sold to major companies, designs that were stolen, ideas that were buried under corporate greed. He wasn't just here to fix a car. He was here to fix his fate. In the basement, the air was colder, quieter. The luxury prototype, the Rolls-Royce Phantom X, stood there like a sleeping beast. Sleek, silver, majestic, and broken. Daniel opened the hood, scanning its complex system. Within minutes, he could see what was wrong and what had been hidden. A missing component, a deliberate fault. It wasn't broken by mistake. Someone had sabotaged it. And in that moment, he realized something chilling. Elena's empire wasn't built on brilliance. It was built on deceit, and now her own arrogance was about to expose it. He picked up his tools. Every move was precise. Every click, every sound echoed like a countdown. Meanwhile, upstairs, Elena continued entertaining her guests. "Do you really think he can do it?" a reporter asked. "Oh, please," Elena laughed. "He'll probably end up setting it on fire. But it's good PR. Makes me look generous." Her assistant, Mia, looked uneasy. "Ma'am," he seemed confident. Elena smirked. "Confidence doesn't fix engines. Money does." But even as she said it, the building lights flickered for a moment. Somewhere deep below, the sound of an engine purred softly, smooth, controlled, alive. By the time Daniel emerged from the basement, there was all on his hands but fire in his eyes. He walked up to the stage quietly, just as Elena was giving an interview. Done, he said simply. The crowd turned. Elena blinked, confused. Done? You mean you gave up already? She mocked. Daniel shook his head. No, I fixed it. The silence that followed was electric. Someone from the tech team whispered, "That's impossible. We couldn't even get the system online." Elena laughed again, though this time it sounded forced. "You're joking, right? My engineers worked for weeks." "Then maybe," Daniel said softly, "they were working on the wrong problem." The murmurs grew louder. Her smile wavered. And when her assistant whispered, "Ma'am, he's serious." The car's running, the color drained from her face. Curiosity burned through the crowd as they rushed downstairs. And there it was, the Royce Phantom X, humming perfectly, its lights glowing like eyes reborn. The engine ran smoother than any model before it. Daniel stood beside it, arms crossed, silent. Elena stepped closer, trying to mask her shock. "How did you?" Daniel interrupted calmly. "You had a power module wired wrong. It wasn't broken. Someone made it that way. On purpose." She stared at him, realizing what that meant. Sabotage. Her team, her company, her pride, all vulnerable. Who would do that? She whispered. Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe someone who thought you'd never look beneath the surface." The press surrounded them. Cameras flashed. And for the first time in her career, Elena Royce, the woman who thought she knew everything, stood speechless. He turned to leave, wiping his hands with a cloth. But as he passed her, he said softly, "You said if I fixed it, you'd marry me. Keep your word or keep your pride, your choice." Her lips parted, but no words came out. And as the crowd buzzed, all she could do was watch him walk away. The man she laughed at. Now the man who had exposed the weakness she didn't even know she had. The humiliation. The next morning, the sky over downtown Atlanta burned orange with the rising sun. The glass towers shimmered, and traffic roared through the streets, people chasing money, meetings, and success. And in the middle of all that chaos stood Marcus with a small, rusted toolbox in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, staring up at a building that seemed to touch the clouds. Evergold Motors, read the golden sign above the revolving doors. The place where rich people came to buy cars that cost more than most people's houses. Marcus wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, the same blue uniform he'd been wearing for years, with all stains that no amount of washing could remove. But today, he wasn't here for another repair job. He was called in by the CEO herself, Victoria Hale, the same woman who had laughed at him the day before. Inside the building, marble floors gleamed like water. Expensive suits passed by, ignoring him like he was invisible. When Marcus reached the elevator, the security guard eyed him suspiciously. "Guard. Maintenance areas in the back, buddy." "Marcus, I'm here to see Miss Hale. She requested me personally." Guard raising an eyebrow. "Her request you? You're right." He picked up the phone, muttered something, and then said reluctantly, "Go on up. Top floor." As the elevator climbed, Marcus could feel his heart pounding. He wasn't scared, just curious. Why would a woman like Victoria call him after mocking him in front of her staff? The doors opened to a hallway lined with glass offices. At the end, through a massive open window, stood Victoria Hale, in her spotless white suit, blonde hair tied neatly, staring out at the city like it belonged to her. "Victoria," without turning around, "You came." "Marcus, you called." Victoria smirking, "Let's see if your hands are as good as your confidence." She turned around and pointed toward the glass wall separating her office from the garage below. Through it, Marcus could see a sleek, black Aston V12 prototype, the company's most prized possession. It wasn't just any car. It was the pride of Evergold Motors. The car had failed just before an international showcase, costing the company millions. "Victoria, that car doesn't start. The best engineers in my company couldn't fix it." "Marcus, and you think I can?" Victoria mocking, "No, but I want to see you fail. Maybe that'll shut you up once and for all." The words hit Marcus like ice, but he didn't react. He just looked her straight in the eye. "Marcus, you sure you want me to try?" Victoria grinning, "Go ahead. If you fix it, I'll marry you." Everyone in the office laughed. Secretaries, engineers, and even Victoria herself. They thought it was a joke. Just another way for their CEO to humiliate the poor mechanic. But Marcus didn't laugh. He simply nodded. "Marcus, I'll hold you to that." The test begins. In the garage below, the car stood like a beast asleep. Marcus put on his gloves, opened the hood, and the smell of burned oil filled the air. The engineers upstairs watched through the glass, whispering and laughing. One of them said, "Let's see how long before he gives up." But Marcus wasn't listening. He was focused. Every sound, every wire, every flicker mattered. His father had been a mechanic too, taught him that cars had souls, that if you listened carefully, they spoke to you. He checked the plugs, the fuel line, and the ignition chip. Everything looked perfect. That's when his eyes caught something small, a faint burn mark near the microcontrol unit. He smiled. Marcus muttering, "Got you." Minutes turned to hours. Sweat rolled down his face, tools clanked against the metal, and the silence of focus filled the room. Upstairs, Victoria pretended not to care, but her eyes never left him. Then suddenly, a spark. The car's system beeped. Lights flickered. Marcus twisted the ignition key, and the engine roared to life. The sound echoed across the garage like thunder. Upstairs, jaws dropped. The same engineers who mocked him leaned forward in disbelief. Victoria froze, eyes wide, her perfect composure cracking. Marcus stepped out of the car, wiping his hands. Marcus calmly, "I believe you owe me a promise." The room went silent. For the first time, Victoria didn't know what to say. Her laughter was gone, replaced by something she hadn't felt in years: humiliation. The aftermath. Within hours, the story spread through the company. The mechanic who fixed the unfixable. Employees whispered, memes circulated, and by evening, everyone knew. Victoria locked herself in her office, replaying that moment again and again, his confidence. His calmness, that engine roar echoing like a taunt in her head. She tried to convince herself it didn't matter. He's just a mechanic, she told herself. But deep down, something burned: pride, curiosity, and a strange, unwanted admiration. She called her assistant. "Victoria, get me his file. Everything, background, work history, family. I want to know who he is." Marcus's life. Back in his neighborhood, Marcus returned home to a small, two-bedroom apartment where his little sister, Alicia, was waiting. She had cerebral palsy and used a wheelchair, but her smile was brighter than any city light. "Alicia, did they pay you well today?" Marcus smiling, "Not yet, but I think I fixed something big." Alicia giggling, "Like what?" "A plane." Marcus, "Something close." He tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "One day, I'll build a better life for you. No one will laugh at us again." Outside, the city lights flickered like stars. But in Marcus's eyes, there was something else: determination. The CEO's curiosity. Days passed. Victoria couldn't focus. Every time she entered the garage, she remembered that day. Who was he really? How did he do it? She invited him back. This time for a consultation, but Marcus didn't come, not immediately. He was busy with small repair jobs in his own community garage, where people came not because he was cheap, but because he was honest. Finally, after 3 calls, he showed up. Victoria pretending to be casual, "I just wanted to thank you for fixing the prototype." Marcus, "You're welcome. Anything else?" Victoria smirking, "I wanted to understand how you did it. My engineers couldn't." Marcus, "Maybe because they were busy proving they were smarter than the machine, instead of listening to it." Victoria's lips parted, not because of what he said, but how he said it: calm, intelligent, almost philosophical. "Victoria, you think I'm arrogant, don't you?" Marcus shrugging, "I think you're used to winning. People like that usually stop learning." For a second, the air turned electric. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The invitation. That evening, Victoria did something unexpected. She offered Marcus a short-term contract to lead a small team of mechanics under Evergold's supervision. It wasn't out of kindness. She wanted to test him, to see if that one lucky fix was just luck. But Marcus accepted, not for the money, for the challenge. And when he walked through those golden doors again, heads turned. The laughingstock mechanic was now officially working under the CEO herself. The next few weeks were chaos. Marcus's methods were unconventional, no fancy tech, no endless meetings. He worked with instinct and experience. The staff called him old school, but the results spoke for themselves. He improved efficiency by 30%, cut repair costs in half, and somehow the impossible, revived old cars the company had abandoned. Victoria watched it all unfold. Each success chipped away at her pride and replaced it with respect. But the board members didn't like it. Board member: "This man is embarrassing our engineers." Another: "He's a mechanic, not a manager." Victoria: "He's getting results. That's all I care about." For the first time, she defended him, and she didn't even know why. The turning point. One night, after a long meeting, Victoria saw Marcus in the workshop. Everyone had gone home, but he was still there, repairing an old car that wasn't even part of his job. "Victoria, why are you still here?" Marcus, without looking up: "This car belonged to an old employee. He retired last year. Thought it deserved a second chance." Victoria: "You're fixing a car out of sentiment." Marcus: "You'd be surprised how much emotion machines hold, if you treat them right." For a moment, silence filled the air. Something about his words, his calmness, his humility. It disarmed her. Victoria softly: "You're different, Marcus." Marcus: "And you're not what I expected either." He smiled faintly, then went back to work. And for the first time in years, Victoria Hale, the uncheckable CEO, didn't know what to say. That night, as she sat in her office overlooking the sleeping city, Victoria found herself thinking about him, his confidence, his kindness, the way he'd turned her challenge into her lesson. She whispered to herself, almost smiling, "Fix this and I'll marry you." Huh? But little did she know, the next test wouldn't be about machines. It would be about heart, loyalty, and how far pride can fall when faced with humility. Because soon, her empire would crumble, and the only man who could save it was the same one she once laughed at: the betrayal. The sun had long set behind the Atlanta skyline, and the glass walls of Evergold Motors reflected the night's glow. A city alive with ambition. Inside the building, though, a storm was brewing. Marcus had just finished another day's work. The garage was quiet now, except for the faint hum of an engine he was testing. He shut it off, wiped his hands, and looked at the car with satisfaction. It wasn't just about fixing machines for him anymore. It was about building something meaningful, something that gave him purpose. But what Marcus didn't know was that while he worked late to perfect the company's dreams, others were busy plotting to destroy his, the board's anger. In the boardroom upstairs, the air was thick, people with tension. Around a long glass table sat a group of men in suits, the board of directors of Evergold Motors. Their faces were sharp, eyes cold. Board member 1: "We can't let this continue. That mechanic is making us look like fools." Board member 2: "He's not even qualified to lead an engineering team." Board member 3: "And yet, the CEO is defending him. Do you realize what that means for our image?" The chairman leaned forward. "Chairman, Victoria Hale is losing control. Ever since that man came in, she's been different, distracted, sentimental." The others nodded in agreement. To them, Marcus wasn't an asset. He was a threat. A man from the streets who dared to rise above his class, who made them feel replaceable. "Chairman, it's time we remind her who truly runs this company." Victoria's change. Meanwhile, Victoria Hale sat alone in her office, staring out at the city. Her reflection in the glass seemed softer than before. The arrogance that once defined her had begun to fade. She thought about Marcus, his calmness, his strength, his way of seeing things that others missed. In him, she saw something she had lost long ago: integrity. Victoria thinking, "He doesn't want my money or power. He wants to fix what's broken." And that made her admire him even more. Her assistant entered, breaking her thoughts. "Assistant, ma'am, the board has requested an emergency meeting tomorrow." Victoria: "At this hour. About what?" Assistant: "They didn't say, but they didn't sound pleased." Victoria frowned. She knew this company inside out, and when the board requested something, it usually meant they were planning a move. Marcus's world That night, Marcus returned home to his sister Alicia. She was waiting at the small dinner table, smiling as he walked in. "Alicia, you're late again?" Marcus laughing. "Cars don't fix themselves." "Alicia, you talk about cars like they're people." "Marcus, they are. You treat them right, they never leave you stranded." She smiled. For a moment, the world felt peaceful, but that peace was fragile. As Marcus washed his hands, his phone buzzed, an unknown number. He hesitated, then picked up. "Marcus. Hello?" Voice cold, unfamiliar. "You think you're special, huh? Fixing one car doesn't make you a hero. Stay in your lane, mechanic." Click. Marcus stood frozen. He didn't recognize the voice, but the message was clear. Someone wanted him gone. The setup. The next morning, Marcus walked into Evergold Motors to find chaos. Security guards were running around, executives whispering, and the atmosphere was heavy. When he reached his workstation, he found police officers waiting. His toolbox was open, and inside it was something that didn't belong. A small black flash drive with the company logo engraved on it. "Officer Marcus Brown." Marcus nodding. "Yeah, officer. We're placing you under investigation for corporate data theft. Please come with us." Marcus's heart stopped. "Marcus, what? That's insane. I didn't take anything." "Officer, then you have nothing to worry about. Let's go." Victoria's shock. When Victoria arrived, the news hit her like a thunderbolt. "Victoria, what do you mean Marcus stole data? That's impossible." "Security head, we found a company flash drive with confidential design files inside his toolbox." "Victoria, that's ridiculous. Anyone could have planted it." Board member coldly. "Evidence is evidence, Miss Hale." The board members were there already, waiting like vultures. They had orchestrated it all. They needed to break her loyalty to Marcus, and this was their perfect chance. "Chairman, Miss Hale, it's not just about Marcus. It's about your judgment. You brought him here. You defended him. And now, look." Victoria clenched her fists. She wanted to scream, to defend him, but all eyes were on her. She had to stay composed. "Victoria, I'll handle this investigation personally." Chairman smirking. "Be careful. Defending a thief could ruin your career." The arrest. Outside the company, reporters gathered. Cameras flashed as Marcus was escorted out in handcuffs. Victoria thinking, "He doesn't want my money or power. He wants to fix what's broken." And that made her admire him even more. Her assistant entered, breaking her thoughts. "Assistant, ma'am, the board has requested an emergency meeting tomorrow." "Victoria, at this hour. About what?" "Assistant, they didn't say. But they didn't sound pleased." Victoria frowned. She knew this company inside out, and when the board requested something, it usually meant they were planning a move. Marcus's world. That night, Marcus returned home to his sister Alicia. She was waiting at the small dinner table, smiling as he walked in. "Alicia, you're late again?" Marcus laughing. "Cars don't fix themselves." "Alicia, you talk about cars like they're people." "Marcus, they are. You treat them right, they never leave you stranded." She smiled. For a moment, the world felt peaceful, but that peace was fragile. As Marcus washed his hands, his phone buzzed, an unknown number. He hesitated, then picked up. "Marcus. Hello?" Voice cold, unfamiliar. "You think you're special, huh? Fixing one car doesn't make you a hero. Stay in your lane, mechanic." Click. Marcus stood frozen. He didn't recognize the voice, but the message was clear. Someone wanted him gone. The setup. The next morning, Marcus walked into Evergold Motors to find chaos. Security guards were running around, executives whispering, and the atmosphere was heavy. When he reached his workstation, he found police officers waiting. His toolbox was open, and inside it was something that didn't belong. A small black flash drive with the company logo engraved on it. "Officer Marcus Brown." Marcus nodding. "Yeah, officer. We're placing you under investigation for corporate data theft. Please come with us." Marcus's heart stopped. "Marcus, what? That's insane. I didn't take anything." "Officer, then you have nothing to worry about. Let's go." Victoria's shock. When Victoria arrived, the news hit her like a thunderbolt. "Victoria, What do you mean Marcus stole data? That's impossible. Security head, we found a company flash drive with confidential design files inside his toolbox. Victoria, that's ridiculous. Anyone could have planted it. Board member coldly. Evidence is evidence, Miss Hale. The board members were there already, waiting like vultures. They had orchestrated it all. They needed to break her loyalty to Marcus, and this was their perfect chance. Chairman, Miss Hale, it's not just about Marcus. It's about your judgment. You brought him here. You defended him. And now, look. Victoria clenched her fists. She wanted to scream, to defend him, but all eyes were on her. She had to stay composed. Victoria, I'll handle this investigation personally. Chairman smirking, be careful. Defending a thief could ruin your career. The arrest. Outside the company, reporters gathered. Cameras flashed as Marcus was escorted out in handcuffs. Reporter 1. Mr. Brown, did you really steal designs from Evergold Motors? Reporter 2. Is it true the CEO was involved? Marcus didn't respond. He just kept walking. Head high, silent, eyes steady, because deep down, he knew the truth would come out. From her office window, Victoria watched, her heart breaking. For the first time, she realized what her laughter, her arrogance, had cost him, and she whispered to herself, trembling, "No, not again. I won't let them destroy him." Marcus in jail. The cell was cold and silent. Marcus sat on the iron bench, staring at the floor. He wasn't afraid, just angry. Angry that his hard work, his honesty, had been turned against him. A guard approached. "Guard, someone posted your bail." Marcus. "Who?" "Guard. Lady outside. Fancy car." Marcus stepped out, and there she was. Victoria Hale, standing by her Mercedes, her eyes softer than he'd ever seen. "Victoria, get in." Marcus coldly. "Why? So you can laugh again?" Victoria. "No. This time, I'm not laughing." The drive. The car ride was quiet. Only the city noise filled the silence. Victoria. "They set you up. The board wanted to get rid of you. I should have seen it coming." Marcus. "You didn't because you never believed they'd turn on you." Victoria softly. "You're right?" He looked out the window, jaw tight. "Marcus, you said if I fixed that car, you'd marry me. Instead, I got arrested." Victoria. "Marcus. Marcus, don't, just don't." The car stopped. She turned to him, her voice trembling. "Victoria, I'll clear your name. I swear it. Marcus, do it for justice, not for me." And he walked away, leaving her speechless. The investigation. Days turned into weeks. Victoria launched a private investigation, digging through surveillance footage, emails, and records. She barely slept. The board thought she was trying to protect her pride, but deep down, she was fighting for him. Late one night, her assistant burst in. "Assistant, ma'am, you need to see this." He placed a file on her desk. Inside were security logs showing the real data breach had happened before Marcus ever entered the building that day, and the person logged in. Ethan Graves, head of engineering, one of the board's closest allies. Victoria's eyes widened. "Victoria, they used him as bait." The showdown. The next morning, she called an emergency meeting. The entire board sat around the table, smug as ever. "Chairman, Miss Hale, I hope you've come to reason. Fire the mechanic, save your reputation." Victoria coldly. "Funny you should say that, because I found the real thief." She threw the file on the table. The room went silent. Every page was proof, login timestamps, surveillance captures, transaction trails. "Victoria, Ethan Graves, your head of engineering sold Evergold's prototype blueprints to a rival company, and you all helped cover it." Gasps filled the room. Ethan's face turned pale. "Ethan, she's lying." Victoria fierce. "Then explain why your personal ID was used at 2:47 a.m., 2 days before Marcus's arrest." The chairman stood up, furious. "Chairman, you think this changes anything? You've lost control of your company." Victoria. "Maybe, but I haven't lost my soul." She turned and walked out, leaving them speechless. Marcus's redemption. That evening, she went to Marcus's small garage. He was there, fixing an old van just like before. Victoria quietly. "You were right?" They set you up. I proved it. Marcus, without looking up. I knew you would. Victoria, I'm sorry for everything. For how I treated you. For that stupid joke. For not believing you sooner. Marcus, smiling faintly. You believed when it mattered. She stepped closer. Her eyes softened, voice low. Victoria, you once said you fix what's broken. Maybe. I'm one of those things too. Marcus. Maybe? For a long moment, silence. Then he looked up, a small grin forming. Marcus, so, about that marriage proposal. Victoria laughed softly. I thought you'd forgotten. Marcus, not a chance. As they stood there, the sound of the city humming around them, neither of them knew what was coming next. Because, while Victoria had cleared his name, the board wasn't done yet. They had lost control and they were ready to destroy them both. The battle for truth had only begun. The fix that changed everything. The sky over the city had turned pale gold. When Daniel finally arrived at the CEO's luxury office tower, his truck looked completely out of place. Among the sea of sleek, black limousines and polished Teslas parked at the front. He stepped out, his overalls slightly dusty, his hands scarred from years of labor. Yet there was something sharp, focused and steady in his eyes. The receptionist looked at him doubtfully, as if wondering if he had taken a wrong turn. He simply said, Tell Ms. Collins that the mechanic she mocked is here, and he's ready to fix what no one else could. The receptionist froze for a second. That line had power, not arrogance, just calm certainty. Moments later, Daniel was escorted into the private parking section beneath the skyscraper where a brand new luxury sports car stood under bright fluorescent lights. The car's sleek body gleamed, but under the hood was chaos. 3 different mechanics from her company had already failed to repair it. Each time, the same result, the engine sputtered. The system crashed and the diagnostics read something no one could explain. Fatal core error, system lockdown. When Daniel saw the car, he chuckled softly. So this is the beast, he asked. The CEO, Victoria Collins, stood a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes sharp with arrogance. She smirked. I hope you're not planning to waste my time. I've already had 3 professionals fail. But sure, fix this car and maybe I'll marry you, just like I said. She laughed coldly. The engineers nearby joined her nervously. But Daniel didn't react. He simply wiped his hands on a small towel and said calmly, Challenge accepted, just give me silence and space. The silence before the storm. As everyone stepped back, Daniel lifted the hood slowly, like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. He didn't rush. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, confident. Victoria watched, impatient, arms folded. She whispered to her assistant, another one playing the hero. Let's see how long before he gives up. But something was different about Daniel. He didn't start with tools. He started with observation. His eyes scanned the wires, the circuits, the control board. He noticed something most would overlook, a faint burn mark near the sensor grid, small as a pencil tip. He murmured, so that's where the story begins. He grabbed his small diagnostic tablet, not a fancy one like the company used, just a custom tool he had built himself. Within minutes, he found what none of the others could. A miscalibrated AI response system that wasn't failing due to code, but due to human error. The last mechanic had uploaded the wrong firmware, a mistake so small, yet powerful enough to lock down the car's entire neural drive. He fixed the line of code, rebooted the engine, and waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft hum. The headlights blinked. The dashboard came alive. The sound was like thunder breaking after years of drought. The car roared, smooth, powerful, flawless. A room full of silence. Every head in the garage turned. Engineers stared at the screen in disbelief as the diagnostics flashed. All systems operational. Victoria's laughter froze midair. She blinked once, twice, then said quietly, How? How did you do that? Daniel smiled slightly. You were too busy hiring degrees, not minds. The silence that followed cut through the air like glass. She opened her mouth to speak, but for the first time in her career, she had no words. He closed the hood, wiped his hands again, and said softly, Remember what you said. Fix this and I'll marry you. I don't need marriage, Ms. Collins. Just respect. Those words, calm, steady, and sincere, hit her harder than any insult could. She looked at him differently now. The arrogance in her face melted away, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar: humility. The twist of fate. As Daniel turned to leave, her assistant rushed forward. Wait. Ms. Collins would like to offer you a position at our company. Head of Mechanical AI Systems. Double the pay you're earning now. He stopped, turned slowly, and said, I appreciate the offer, but I didn't fix your car for money. He paused. I fixed it because every time someone looks down on a mechanic, they forget one thing. Machines listen to hands that understand, not mouths that command. The assistant didn't know what to say. Neither did Victoria. He walked toward his truck, his boots echoing softly against the marble floor. The staff parted silently as he passed, each of them realizing they had just witnessed something far greater than a mechanical repair. They had seen a man rewrite dignity, a CEO's realization. Victoria stood still long after he was gone. For the first time, she replayed her own words in her mind. Fix this and I'll marry you. She had said it as a joke, a mockery, a display of power. But what she didn't realize was that she had revealed something about herself. Her arrogance, her belief that money made her superior. Now, watching that old, dusty truck drive away, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: shame. Her assistant asked softly, Mom, should I finalize the AI project meeting? She shook her head. No. Cancel it. I need to do something first. That night, she drove alone to Daniel's old workshop, the same one she had once passed by without a glance. It was closed, but she saw the lights still glowing inside. He was there, working quietly on another car, humming softly to himself. She hesitated before walking in. He looked up, surprised but calm. Miss Collins, he said, you here for another challenge? She smiled faintly, this time without pride. No, I'm here to apologize. Daniel put down his wrench, looked at her for a moment, then said, Apologies don't change the past, but they can fix the future. So go ahead. The apology. Her voice trembled slightly. I was wrong. About you? About people like you. I thought education and power made me better. But today I learned that intelligence doesn't wear a suit. It wears experience. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. He nodded slowly. Thank you? That means something. She sighed, looking around at his small workshop, walls covered with tools, sketches of designs, and a photo of an older man, probably his father, smiling beside a rusted engine. Was he a mechanic too? She asked. Daniel smiled softly. Yeah. He used to say, son, machines are like people. They work when you respect them. Guess that's why I never stop respecting both. She looked at him, not as a mechanic, not as a lower-class worker, but as someone who had something she had lost long ago. Peace, a turning point. That night, Victoria made a decision that would change both their lives. The next morning, her company announced a new initiative, Hands of Steel. Hearts of Gold, a partnership, programmed to fund small-town mechanics and inventors, to bring their ideas to life. And who did she invite to lead it? Daniel. But this time, she didn't offer him a job, she offered him a partnership. You build, she said, I'll fund. Together, let's fix what others ignore. He agreed, not because of fame or revenge, but because he saw a chance to make real change. Within months, their collaboration started producing revolutionary automotive solutions, low-cost engines that could power vehicles with 70% less fuel. His story spread, the mechanic who taught a CEO humility. The world takes notice. Journalists called, news outlets featured them, and soon Daniel's workshop turned into a full-scale research lab. But he never changed. He still wore his old overalls. He still greeted his workers with a handshake instead of orders. And Victoria, she changed too. She listened more, spoke less, and began visiting the factory floors herself. Talking to her workers, learning from them. Once, a board member questioned her, saying, Ma'am, why are you wasting time with mechanics? She replied simply, Because that's where real innovation begins, with the people who touch the work, not just talk about it. Curiosity cliffhanger. 1 year later, during a major car expo in New York, Daniel was invited to demonstrate his new AI engine. The same one he had repaired for her that day, now improved tenfold. Reporters crowded the floor, cameras flashing, the audience buzzing with anticipation. But before Daniel could speak, Victoria took the stage first. She looked directly at the crowd and said, "Last year, I made a joke, one I deeply regret. I said to a man, 'Fix this and I'll marry you.' He fixed far more than a car that day. He fixed my perspective." The crowd went silent. Daniel looked down, humbled. She continued, "Today, I'm not here as a CEO, but as a student of humility, respect, and second chances." The audience applauded thunderously as the cameras flashed and the world listened. Daniel leaned toward the mic and said, "You don't need money to prove worth. You just need a moment where truth speaks louder than ego." His words echoed across the hall, a quote that would be replayed millions of times across the internet. The story was no longer just about fixing a car. It was about fixing people. The lights of the New York International Auto Expo shone brighter than ever that night. Cameras flashed, microphones rose like a forest, and thousands of spectators whispered Daniel's name. The man who had once been mocked by a CEO, now standing beside her as an equal. But what the crowd didn't know was that behind Daniel's calm smile, there was a storm of emotion. He wasn't here to gloat or to show off his success. He was here for something far bigger, to prove that respect can change the world. The man who refused to bow. After the applause faded, Daniel was invited to the main press conference hall. Rows of journalists filled the room, each eager to ask the same question. "Mr. Daniels, how does it feel to go from a roadside mechanic to the face of modern automotive innovation?" He smiled softly, looked around, and replied, "It feels exactly the same, because success doesn't change who you are. It just reveals who you've been all along." The audience fell silent for a second, then erupted in applause. He continued, "When I was fixing engines in that small, dusty shop, people saw grease, not genius. But that's the problem with this world. It measures worth in degrees and titles, not in effort or experience." A reporter raised her hand and asked, "And what about Ms. Collins? You seem to have built something powerful together despite your rough beginning." Daniel turned to look at Victoria, who was sitting in the front row, eyes glistening. He smiled faintly and said, "Sometimes, the people who laugh at you are the ones who end up learning the most from you. And sometimes, those people become your strongest allies." Victoria's face softened, and for the first time in years, she felt proud not of her achievements, but of her growth. Behind the curtains, later that evening, the expo ended. The halls emptied, but Daniel stayed back, quietly staring at the car he had once fixed, now a symbol of his journey. Victoria walked over, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and said, "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were beneath me." He chuckled. "You weren't wrong to think that. The world trains us to believe people are ranked by money, by power, by looks. But machines taught me something else. Every small gear matters." She took a deep breath. "You changed me, Daniel. I can't even recognize the woman I was before." He looked at her, calm and grounded as always. "Good, because the world doesn't need more CEOs who talk. It needs leaders who listen." Her eyes shimmered. She wasn't used to people speaking to her like that, honest, direct, and without fear. The unexpected twist. Weeks later, their project Hands of Steel, Hearts of Gold became a global success. Mechanics from small towns were getting funding. New technologies were emerging, and car companies were taking notes. But success has a strange way of attracting envy. One afternoon, during a live product demonstration, a senior executive from a rival company sabotaged their prototype, hoping to humiliate Daniel. The car refused to start. Cameras flashed. The audience murmured. The investors frowned. Victoria's heart raced. This was the same kind of moment where she had once mocked him. She knew how it felt to stand in front of a crowd, waiting to be judged. She looked at him and whispered, "Daniel, it's not your fault. But Daniel raised his hand gently, signaling her to stay calm. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the silent car. The tension was thick enough to cut through. He touched the hood, listened to the faint hum beneath, and smiled. "It's not broken," he said. "It's scared." The crowd laughed, thinking it was a joke, until Daniel pulled out a small wire connector, reattached it to the microgrid, and hit the ignition. The car came to life. The lights glowed, the engine purred, smoother than ever. The audience gasped, then exploded into applause. He turned to the cameras and said, "Sometimes even machines need a second chance, just like people." He continued, "When I was fixing engines in that small, dusty shop, people saw grease, not genius. But that's the problem with this world. It measures worth in degrees and titles, not in effort or experience." A reporter raised her hand and asked, "And what about Ms. Collins? You just seem to have built something powerful together despite your rough beginning." Daniel turned to look at Victoria, who was sitting in the front row, eyes glistening. He smiled faintly and said, "Sometimes, the people who laugh at you are the ones who end up learning the most from you. And sometimes, those people become your strongest allies." Victoria's face softened, and for the first time in years, she felt proud not of her achievements, but of her growth. Behind the curtains, later that evening, the expo ended. The halls emptied, but Daniel stayed back, quietly staring at the car he had once fixed, now a symbol of his journey. Victoria walked over, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and said, "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were beneath me." He chuckled. "You weren't wrong to think that. The world trains us to believe people are ranked by money, by power, by looks. But machines taught me something else. Every small gear matters." She took a deep breath. "You changed me, Daniel. I can't even recognize the woman I was before." He looked at her, calm and grounded as always. "Good, because the world doesn't need more CEOs who talk. It needs leaders who listen." Her eyes shimmered. She wasn't used to people speaking to her like that, honest, direct, and without fear. The unexpected twist. Weeks later, their project Hands of Steel, Hearts of Gold became a global success. Mechanics from small towns were getting funding. New technologies were emerging, and car companies were taking notes. But success has a strange way of attracting envy. One afternoon, during a live product demonstration, a senior executive from a rival company sabotaged their prototype, hoping to humiliate Daniel. The car refused to start. Cameras flashed. The audience murmured. The investors frowned. Victoria's heart raced. This was the same kind of moment where she had once mocked him. She knew how it felt to stand in front of a crowd, waiting to be judged. She looked at him and whispered, "Daniel, it's not your fault." But Daniel raised his hand gently, signaling her to stay calm. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the silent car. The tension was thick enough to cut through. He touched the hood, listened to the faint hum beneath, and smiled. "It's not broken," he said. "It's scared." The crowd laughed, thinking it was a joke, until Daniel pulled out a small wire connector, reattached it to the microgrid, and hit the ignition. The car came to life. The lights glowed, the engine purred, smoother than ever. The audience gasped, then exploded into applause. He turned to the cameras and said, "Sometimes even machines need a second chance, just like people." The redemption. After the event, Victoria sat quietly in her office, staring out at the city skyline. Her mind replayed everything: her laughter that day, her arrogance, her downfall, and Daniel's quiet strength. She whispered to herself, "He didn't just fix the car, he fixed me." Moments later, Daniel walked in, still in his workshop clothes, holding 2 cups of tea this time. She smiled softly. "You've upgraded from coffee to tea now." He laughed. "Coffee is for people who run fast. Tea is for people who think deeply." They sat in silence for a few moments, the kind that isn't awkward but peaceful. "Finally," she said, "do you ever regret not taking revenge on me that day?" He shook his head. "No, because revenge burns fast, but respect lasts forever. I didn't want to hurt you, Victoria. I wanted you to see." She looked down, her voice quiet. "And I did. More than you know." The proposal that shocked everyone. Months later, Daniel received an invitation. a grand gala organized by Victoria's company to celebrate the first anniversary of their initiative. He didn't expect much, just a few speeches, some formalities, maybe another award. But what happened next stunned him and everyone watching. In front of hundreds of guests, Victoria took the stage and said, "1 year ago, I made a foolish promise. I said, fix this and I'll marry you. Back then, it was a mockery. But today, I want to make it right." The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Daniel froze in disbelief. She smiled softly and continued, "I'm not here to ask for marriage out of pity or guilt. I'm asking because I found in him what I never found in power: humility, truth, and heart." She walked toward him, holding out her hand. "So, Daniel, will you let me walk beside you this time, not as your boss, not as your admirer, but as your equal?" The hall was dead silent. Daniel stood still for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Victoria," he said gently, "I fixed your car, not your heart. You did that yourself." The crowd murmured. She blinked, caught off guard. He continued, "But if you're asking me to walk beside you, as equals, as friends, as partners in building something good, then yes, I will." The crowd erupted in applause, louder than any before. The legacy? Years passed. Their company became one of the most respected in the world, not just for its technology, but for its culture of respect and equality. Daniel became a mentor to young inventors, especially those from poor backgrounds. He often told them, "You're not defined by where you start, but by how you face those who doubt you." Victoria, on the other hand, used her influence to open technical schools across the country. Each one carried a small plaque at the entrance that read, "Dedicated to the ones who fix what others abandon." And beneath it, Daniel's quote, "Hands that work with respect build things that last." The final scene. One evening, years later, Daniel and Victoria stood at the rooftop of their new research center. The city lights twinkled below. Victoria turned to him and said softly, "Do you ever think about that day, when I laughed at you?" He smiled. "Every day. Because that laughter started everything." She laughed gently. "Funny how life works. I laughed out of arrogance, and today, that same moment makes me smile out of gratitude." Daniel looked up at the stars. "You see, Victoria, people think fixing machines is hard, but fixing hearts, that's the real work." They stood there in silence, the city humming below, the wind carrying the sound of distant traffic, the same music that had once been the rhythm of Daniel's lonely workshop. In a world where people chase titles, Daniel chose dignity. In a room full of laughter, he stayed silent and let his work speak. And when arrogance met humility, transformation began. Remember this. Don't ever underestimate the person who works with their hands, because sometimes the mechanic you laugh at might be the one who builds the future you live in. Respect people, not for their position, but for their persistence. Because greatness doesn't wear suits, it wears scars. True strength is quiet. True success is humble. True respect is earned.